Hi, I'm Fee the Writer Bee. Welcome back to Vlogmas Day 13. Today I am creating Nicholas's family in The Sims. So first I'm creating his father, King Alberic, who is the King of Providence, the land where Nicholas comes from originally. He's an elderly king who's had a long reign. He took over from his parents at a very young age after they passed away. He's the eldest child of his parents and has younger siblings that he doesn't have much to do with, who Nicholas has never met. He knows he has aunts and uncles and cousins, but he's never met any of them. Alberic has 8 children, who I'll be creating all of them today. 5 with his first wife and 3 with his second wife, with Nicholas being the youngest of his children and from his second marriage. Alberic is a king who's much loved by the people, and they're devastated when he passes away, which happens right at the start of the story. The king's first wife is Queen Emmeline. She comes from a kingdom that they had conflict between. Their marriage was a political marriage, but they made the most of the marriage that they had. All but one of the king's children had arranged marriages, and Queen Emmeline had input into who all of her children would eventually marry. The people of the kingdom are devastated when she passes away, and she passes away in childbirth with her 5th child. And there's always comments about Nicholas when they do finally get to see him in public about the fact that he looks more like the Queen Emmeline rather than his mother Rosalind. And a lot of people suspect that he might be the child of one of his older siblings, even though he isn't. There's a big age gap between the children of the first queen and the children of the second queen, and Nicholas is actually younger than his sister's eldest child. Nicholas wishes that he had Emmeline as his mother, because from what his older siblings always say about her, she sounds more like a caring person and an involved mother, whereas his mother was never involved. His mother was more interested in the political side of things, so because she was involved with politics, she didn't have much time for the children that she had. And the king had portraits of his first wife up everywhere around the palace, which he never took down, which upset his second wife a great deal. I did have to go change her age from adult to elder, because I forgot that I needed her to be an elder so that I could create her children as adults, because she dies when she's an adult, so I always think of her as the adult that she died as and not the elder she would have been if she had survived. Even though Alberic is the next child, I created Nicholas's sister Emmeline next, because the sample child that popped up was very close to how I picture her already in my mind, so I went through and created Emmeline next, because I knew if I waited until when I'm actually meant to create her that I wouldn't get the right look for her, so I created her straight away. Emmeline already has children. The only child that I've actually named is her eldest son, Frederick, and he's close in age with Nicholas, just a little bit older than Nicholas. Despite being the queen of a foreign country and married to a foreign king, she spends the majority of her time in Providence with her children until the time when her younger siblings leave the palace. When they leave the palace, she returns back to the kingdom where her children's father comes from. Because Rosalind isn't very involved in her children's life, Emmeline takes on the mother role to her 3 youngest siblings, despite them being from her father's second marriage and not getting along with her stepmother at all. I still didn't create the king's eldest son next. I created Emmeline's twin brother, Emeric, who looks very similar to herself. Emmeline's the eldest twin and Emeric's the younger twin. Emeric dies when Nicholas is a baby. Nicholas doesn't remember him at all. He dies in war, leaving behind a wife and daughters, none who are named in the story, who Emmeline is very heavily involved in, because they're all that she has left of her twin brother that she'd lost. And one of the big reasons why Emmeline returned to her home kingdom with her children after she was married, the excuse that she used with her husband was to help watch her brother's children, which was truth, but she also was homesick and wanted any reason to return back to her home country. She doesn't like living outside of the country. I finally got to creating Nicholas's eldest brother, Alberic, named after their father. who is the heir to the throne. Nicholas doesn't get to see a lot of his brother because his brother is always with the king performing duties, learning how to become the next king and to be a good king like his father. Alberic also has children, slightly younger than Emmeline's eldest, so a few years younger than Nicholas. The next brother is Walter. He's a little bit younger than his eldest 3 siblings, and Roderick always looked up to Walter, following him everywhere. Walter was a bit of a wild child, and when Emmerich passed away, he went and took over Emmerich's duties with the War Council. He spent his youth exploring the secret passageways of the palace, and he's very keen to show those secret passages to his younger brothers. He's married but doesn't have any children at the start of the story. He was meant to move to another kingdom for a part of a peace treaty, but when Emmerich died, he ended up returning back home to take on the duties of heir in case anything happened to his elder brother before him. Who I'm already creating on screen is Elwyn, the youngest child that King Alberic and Queen Emmeline had together. The child that Queen Emmeline died giving birth to. Elwyn is the only child of the king that never married. He doesn't have an arranged marriage due to how sickly he always was, and he was never expected to survive to adulthood and is confined to a wheelchair. But despite his body's physical limits, he is very, very book smart, and he's the one that his brothers go to when they need advice. Next, I created Rosalind, the mother to the king's 3 youngest children, his second wife, and she wasn't actually meant to marry King Alberic. She was actually arranged to have a marriage to Prince Alberic, the king's eldest son. They're very close in age. She's actually a little bit younger than Alberic. She's same age as Emmeline and Emmerich. But after Queen Emmeline died, her father rearranged the arrangement between their 2 kingdoms and arranged for her to marry the king instead. She was a little bit upset about that at first. She wanted to be the mother to the future king of the country, and with marrying the elderly king who already had 4 sons, that placed any sons that she had with the king very, very low down the succession chain. She and Alberic did not get along at all. When she gets to meet Alberic, she's glad that she didn't have to marry him. Rosalind is disappointed that her first child with the king ended up being a daughter, even though it was unlikely that her children would ever rule the country. She still wanted sons. Her eldest daughter's name is Augustine, and she is the king's second daughter. The king only ever had 2 daughters. When the queen Rosalind gives birth to a daughter, she starts trying for a son right away, hoping that her next child is a son, leaving Augustine in the care of nursemaids and eventually her eldest sister Emmeline. Rosalind only starts paying her daughter attention when she gets to teenage years, and she realises how close she is with Emmeline, and she gets jealous of that closeness that her daughter has with her older sister. There's only 10 months in age between Augustine and Roderick. Roderick is very much like Walter in personality, and he's had people tell him that his father, King Alberic, was like that as well as a child. Despite being the son that the Queen wanted so desperately, she doesn't pay him any more attention than what she does to Augustine, not liking children very much. She just wanted them more for the status than to be an actual parent, because she sees how the wives of her stepchildren that don't have sons are treated, and she doesn't want to be looked down upon for only having daughters. And her son Nicholas, my main character, is not planned at all, because once she has her son, she decides that she doesn't want any more children, and he comes along as a surprise. Rosalind has the most disconnect to Nicholas out of her 3 children, because Nicholas is timid, whereas Roderick's boisterous and outgoing, and Augustine wants to be friends with absolutely everyone and everything, and able to make social connections a lot easier than Nicholas does. That's Nicholas's entire family created in Sims 4.